Our first question is from Mindful. What are some tips to keep joints functionally healthy and pain-free when you're 40 plus?
You know, there's this myth around joint pain that as you get older, your joints deteriorate, okay? And that's what causes joint pain. The truth is, if you move your joints in optimal ways, if you move them the way that they're supposed to appropriately, and you strengthen the body, strengthen the muscles that support the joints actually stay healthier over longer periods of time. Like somebody who works out and does it right, and doesn't beat themselves up or have muscle imbalances or train whatever. They train appropriately and they're in their 70s. They will have better, healthier joints than people who don't do that, who are in their 70s.
It's balance. I mean, it's if you get too strong in one direction, a lot of times this, and you don't put the work in terms of stabilizing that and being able to control that. This is where you see like that discrepancy itself. This is where you start to see a lot of the joint pain start to arise and this is what people don't consider because they think that they're getting strong and they are getting a lot stronger, but they're not building up their support system alongside it.
Ben Gay and Icy Hot. You're welcome.
Yeah, you mix them together. No. Oh my god!
Hey, does that seem like
don't? Hey, you gotta wash your hands.
Hey, that was like the formula. 25,
that's what my dad did
25 years ago. You know what I'm saying? I mean, don't you remember when you first were a trainer just 20 years ago? Like the locker room,
bro. Mix those.
You walk in the locker room.
Oh yeah, smells.
After playing basketball with all the older guys at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
it just
bro. Mix those. Mix those with Tiger Balm. You make yourself. You won't feel nothing.
It's crazy that there's still a massive market for that. I mean, that's kind of what people think is.
Well, look if you move, here's the keys. All right, here are the keys. Strength train properly and appropriately with full ranges of motion. Train in different planes of motion, and work on or maintain mobility. So that means you're not just strength training, but mobility movements. If you do those things and you do it appropriately, you're going to have amazing joints.
I'm going to skip to the last one as my most priority. I think people that get into 40 plus, they've neglected to move in all these different planes, and a mobility practice
solves basically all of that.
Will solve that. Yeah. So, a great program, our MAPS performance program. Every other the off days are the mobility days, and instead of approaching the workouts as the priority, the foundational days, approach the mobility days as your like primary, like that's the thing you focus on. I mean, this was for me and I was 38. When was that? It was around 38 or so. I went on that like year and a half, 2 year kick of just, that was the way I trained. Everything was focused around mobility. And it's not like I lost a bunch of muscle from that. Like you're going to end up feeling so much better, but you just got to prioritize it. Instead of prioritizing the squat, bench, deadlift stuff that we always talk about are so important. It's like put your energy and focus in mobility training first, and then that becomes the secondary thing of making sure you do this. And I'm not saying but disregard those movements.
Right, because it's important to understand that appropriate and proper strength training makes your joints healthier and you'll have less pain. You'll have less problems. You'll be less likely to develop cartilage issues.
The problem though, Sal, with that statement is that
I say appropriately and properly.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because that's such a wide range, and most people think what they're doing is appropriate and proper.
Appropriate meaning you're using a weight that you can manage with good technique and good form. You're working out or trying to work out in full ranges of motion.
Yeah.
And you're training in different planes of motion. So what are different planes? Different planes are like front to back, side to side, and rotate. So think of it that way, right? So if all your exercises are front to back, like I'm squatting, I'm benching, I'm deadlifting, well, I'm not strengthening things laterally, side to side. I'm not rotating with anything. So eventually I'll start to develop problems because like Justin said, you start to get this imbalance between the strength you can do in one direction and the strength you can move in the other direction. And then that causes problems.
And that's the thing too. And I love mobility. Obviously this has been like a big contribution that I brought initially when we started the podcast, but it's like you don't need to always like be stuck doing mobility in conjunction with like you need to weave in these movements into your training. And so if you actually did lateral lunges, if you actually did rotational movements that are loaded, you worked your way up to that where it's a strength move, it's going to cover the bases. It's just about expressing all the potential that your joints have in terms of movement and being able to strengthen it.
So the reason why I love the idea of going all in on the mobility thing and making the strength training and traditional stuff an afterthought into this is because once you do that and you start to see the benefits and you feel the benefits of doing that, you then adopt that philosophy. And then when you put enough time in, I actually rarely ever have to do mobility anymore. Now I just incorporate the exercise.
So you're talking about somebody who's already experiencing.
Yeah, that's this person.
Most people haven't.
That's this person. They're 40-something years old. They're oh man, my hips, my knees, all the shoulders. I just I get a little bit of rhythm. And
that's different. If you already have pain, then
that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking to the 35-year-old who's like I'm trying to be proactive because let's be honest, that person's not asking this question. Yeah. It's the person who feels like every time they get in a little bit of a rhythm, the knees start talking to them, the hips start talking to them, the shoulders start talking to them, and they just keep getting in this cycle of, and they either do crutches by putting wraps and straps and belts and wrapping up or shortening range up. And it's like, you know what you need to do is you need to just let go of that training for a little bit, completely adopt this philosophy of becoming the mobility guy and get into flow and that type of stuff and see how good you feel from that and how little muscle you lose from going to become that guy or girl. And then after you've put enough work in and you see the difference, then you integrate exercises that address all that. You start to do things like the windmill now or the Turkish get up. Yeah,
you're building a base of strength for your end ranges.
Yes.
That you didn't have.
I don't have to.
You don't have that strength yet.
The amount of I had to do to get where I'm at now and how little I do of it now.
Yeah.
And now I have a deep full range of motion squat that I can sit ass to grass. I can sit down ass to grass comfortably with weight on my back for as long as I want. I don't ever get uncomfortable in there to where, and you're talking about a guy who couldn't break 90 at one point in his lifting career. But and now all I have to do is squat once a week, ass to grass like that, and it takes care of all that ankle and hip mobility issues that I used to have and low back issues. And it completely addresses that.
Yeah, getting there is hard. Maintaining is much easier.
Same thing goes for like overhead press. There was a time when I was the meathead guy who shoulder pressed 90 degrees, everything was in front of him, and I couldn't bring my arms up straight above it. And then I got to the point where Z pressing changed my life. And now as long as I Z press and do complete standing overhead presses, I don't have to do all these crazy shoulder mobility moves because it keeps my shoulders hypermobile. So if once you have lost a lot of this mobility and you're suffering from this joint pains, one of the best things in my opinion is to kind of adopt this mobility philosophy. And a good way to do that would be to prioritize like the mobility days in our performance program and maybe only do 1 or 2 foundational days.
To prevent, right? If they're saying I want to keep my joints functionally healthy, like move in different planes and you'll probably never get to that point.